Sup y'all, it's your boy Kairos. Today I have the definitive guide for Arms Warrior in 10.2. Let's get right into it. So to just explain it, your stats are going to look like versatility, haste, mastery. Wherever you cannot put haste, you're going to put mastery. You're going to keep around 30% versatility, so you don't have so much of it. You're just wasting stats. Anyway, now that we have the stats out of the way, I want to explain the rotation. Or I guess, the better thing to look at is the talents. Skull Splitter is probably the best spell in the game right now for Arms Warrior. It's doing too much. It's just doing insane damage. And it's actually, there's no benefit of running Exhilarating Blows, which a lot of Warriors were running last patch. And the thing that made it so good last patch was the simple fact of your top damage was Mortal Strike. Your damage can still look like that, but honestly, with how much cleave damage you're doing, it's almost better to just run Sweeping Strikes for AoE or cleaving. Cleaving is believing, or Strength of Arms for a little bit more overpower, so it crits a little more, so you're actually doing more damage, and you have the added benefit of Impale, which further increases your critical strike damage by a further 10%. And there's not a lot of flexibility with this as far as changing out different talents. I would say, honestly, Executioner's Precision's a lock-in. It's just you have so many overpowers, you have so many executes, especially if you're spreading your rend everywhere, that if you're doing it like into a demo lock, PM Hunter, any Hunter specialization, because it's a third target. Now, if you're doing it into a threes team, it's even stronger. You're gonna have more rend damage. You're gonna have more execute damage, which in turn is also gonna give you more mortal strike damage. All these talents synergize beautifully together. Now, as far as the rotation, it's more of a priority is met thing. Basically, is how to explain it. So you have this target. You're gonna have, it's just always you're gonna slow them. You're gonna mortal strike. You're going to want to have rend on the target, so you're going to thunderclap. When you do not have Mortal Strike on cooldown, when Mortal Strike is on cooldown, basically, I don't have an overpower, I'm going to use Thunderclap. And this is literally the entire rotation of this entire build. You have Mortal Strike, you got the Battle Lord proc, so it costs less rage. This is literally your entire thing. When you have Execute, when you have Sudden Death, you want to press it as soon as possible. Okay? This is all you're doing. You have Mortal Strikes on cooldown. You have no overpowers. You're going to Thunderclap. This is literally it, guys. This is literally the rotation. Mortal Strike, overpower, Mortal Strike proc, no overpower, Thunderclap. See how it works? Okay, now that we have the rotation down, anytime Sudden Death, you're going to use it on cooldown. The reason is you can proc another Sudden Death while you have Sudden Death. Okay, now that we have that, and we are going to burst a very specific way, I could see a lot of low-rated, and even Duelist Warriors making this mistake, maybe even right under Gladiator. If they're not careful, they're just sending it. They want to go full way. You do not want to burst right away. Storm of Destruction does not put a Mortal Strike effect on the target. It just slows them now. Okay, so if you're running Hurricane, you're running all the big damage in this build. This is what's gonna make your damage crazy. Okay, you have Mortal Strike on the target. You have rend, so you use Thunderclap in there. You want to cleave two targets. Okay. You're most likely going to get an Execute proc in there as well. You want to have Sweeping Strikes up if you're cleaving. You want to have your bleeds. You want to have your snare up. And basically what you're going to do, you're going to press Skull Splitter first, then Colossus Smash, and then your entire burst, and your go is going to look like that. Why the reason for that? That way, you still get the huge Skull Splitter debuff on the target, because it seems like most people are not tracking Skull Splitter. So if you do that, you have Sweeping Strikes up, all you're going to do is a lot of people, they make the mistake of disarming late. If they don't disarm right away, it's literally you Colossus Smash and their next global. They're literally, as soon as they're off the GCD, they're going to be pressing disarm. A lot of people tend to not do it automatically. And by the time that you're already spinning, that you've already popped all your cooldowns, they've disarmed you into Bladestorm. Who would have guessed? There is no other reason to run any other talent. Warlord's Torment, complete waste of time. You're running Bladestorm, it's doing too much damage, it's hitting for 50, 60k on crits. Non-crits like 50, 40, 45k, sometimes it's like 35. But the thing is, you have Skull Splitter, you have Rend, you have Deep Wounds on the target, you have Mortal Strike on the target. Basically every time, you know, and here's the other beautiful thing. So I'm going to wait until Avatar's back in a couple of seconds. Now, I have played with the Mortal Strike where you run Exhilarating Blows. The problem with the Exhilarating Blows is it doesn't, I mean, there could be some potential with it, but honestly, having Massacre, Hurricane, and all these damage modifiers on your talent tree that buff Mortal Strike, that buff Overpower, or that buff Sweeping Strikes if you're trying to get a lot of cleave in, there's too much damage not to do this build. You know, and as far as having, you know, Shockwave, I know there's a loss on Shockwave, but the thing is, it's Thunderous Roar just doing way more damage, and especially if you queue into like a hunter team. So if you queue into, like, if you're queuing twos, for example, and you run, let's say, Battlefield Commander, so you can root all the pets, you can root them when they put you in a root snare, or the second root snare, you root them at the same time. It's harder for them to get away. You know, you can use Rattle and Cry offensively to remove all movement and pairing effects and grant you 30% movement speed to allies. The reason why that's so good is basically if you have a hunter going on you, you pop that, they disengage, you pop all your cooldowns on them. On that disengage, you're moving 30% faster. Then you have the Mortal Strike, or not the Mortal Strike effect, but the Heroic Leap effect on them. Or you have the buff for it. So you're just full send all the way. And if they're popping cooldowns on you, well, now you've just increased your health by, what is it, 10%? Okay, granting all party members. So you increase your health by 10%. So you popped it defensive, you're using it offensively with Battlelord. And that is actually such a really good move. Targets receive 5% more damage from all sources while bleeding. Really good. Just a 5% damage buff. Berserker Rage. Range increased by 8 yards for Berserker Shout. So you get a lot more with this talent, I believe. Go Berserk, removing and granting all immunity to fear, sap, and incapacitate for 6 seconds. Also remove fear effects from group members within 20 yards. So you're buffing that talent even more, I believe. Or you could also, okay, maybe that works with that talent. So it's 26 yards, which is insane. Piercing Howl is really good. But something else to talk about: for dealing as much maximum damage as possible, do not run Sweeping Strikes into a Discipline Priest. All their healings absorb. They do have a ton of damage. So if, let's say, I queue into a Discipline Arms Warrior, Discipline Hunter, Discipline Demon Hunter is a really good one too. So you'll basically run into something like this. And you can actually tunnel the DH a lot in that game and actually still do a ton of damage. I'll run something that looks like this, or even this. Sometimes even running Disarm into DH is not the greatest because they do have glimpse. I don't feel like it's always the best thing. And if you're queuing with the healer, Safeguard is still really, really strong. But if you're queuing into, let's say, Arms Warrior, Discipline, this is really good. Really good versus DK. Really good versus basically any melee in the game. This is probably going to be your talent setup. You know, unless if it's maybe even Rogue, you could be a little more offensive. Maybe even drop the Disarm, especially if they're assassination. So you're not really going to get the full benefit from the Disarm as you would, like, let's say an Arms Warrior. Because the only thing an Arms Warrior can do is use Piercing Howl and Thunderclap. That's it. Really not that great. You know, even Rep Pally's disarm, it kind of reduces some of the damage that they do, but not much, especially if they have a stack of judgment and a stack of whatever. They've got other things coming off cooldown. They do a ton of damage regardless. But disarm, this is basically what you would run into all that. If you're running into Resto, Druid, Sharpen's really good, especially prior to that burst, so all their healing's really low for 4 seconds. The Bladestorm lasts for half the time. You're stacking haste. Your Bladestorm's super fast in that time. Basically, what you're doing, you have a Sharpened Blade up for that entire burst. You have a ton of damage. You have Skull Splitter. All your bleeds doing absolutely unhealable damage. And they have Mortal Strike up on them, or Sharpened Blade. You come out of that Bladestorm. You instantly Mortal Strike the target again. And what happens is, instead of 50%, now they're down to 25. You're still dealing a ton of pressure. You have a couple seconds if you're running Hurricane to do a few more things. Reapply Rend, execute, overpower a little bit, and then start your second Bladestorm if you're just trying to just get the entire enemy's team's cooldowns or force a kill, whatever it is. Basically, that's your entire go. You're just using Bladestorm. You're cleaving as much as possible. You use Bladestorm twice. Bladestorm does an insane amount of damage. You put all your Bladestorms on cooldown. You put everything on cooldown. And in 45 to 35 seconds, you're going to have another Bladestorm. Try to line them up differently so you don't line it up with, sweeping strikes. But it is just so crazy how much damage that you're dealing right now. But basically, always in the first burst, protect your Colossus Smash. And you can still be CC'd even if you do pop Thunderous Roar. So make sure that you're just a little bit away. Just a little bit. Piercing Hell, if you can. I know a lot of classes, DK, Rogue, other warriors. But I've fought some pretty good warriors this season starting out. Bladestorm, I've just been dealing way more damage than all of them. It's probably because they don't have Force Set yet. But anyway, guys, I want to make this guide for you. As far as running any other talents, it's just the 2 and the Force that are just way too good. You don't have to put Rend under bars because you have not Colossus Smash, but Thunderclap. Thunderclap is actually still dealing, it's not a ton, but if you're hitting 2 targets, they both get hit by 25k. Well, you just did 50k damage, and you applied Rend to both of them, and now they're slowed by 20%. That's another thing. A lot of people are slow. It's really annoying. It's a really, really it's almost like Unholy DK, but you can actually live through damage. It's where, if you're not a magic user, like if it's a physical damage user, it feels like Arms is way tankier. And if you're running Fueled by Violence, for example, and you heal a lot, you can actually have like almost 1 million healing in a game, especially if it starts to go into deep dampen. Your deep wounds just heal you so much, and you just feel so damn tanky this patch, especially if you're spamming Ignore Pain as much as you can. Basically off cooldown to mitigate as much damage, make it as easy as you can for your healer. It's a 12-second cooldown, I believe 11 seconds, so it's even better. So you almost get what would that be, get about 5 of them every minute. Really good. But anyway, guys, we talked about the rotation, we talked about stats, PvP talents. I think that pretty much covers everything. Disarm, basically your top major talents are going to be War Banner for setup comps, Death Sentence to connect, Disarm versus Warriors DK, stuff like that, because when a DK they use Sudden Doom, it's their proc for their Death Coil. They're going to do 50% more damage with Clawing Shadow. Really, really good to do on their burst, especially if they're any other race. So basically, if they don't have something, you can disarm it so you don't just fall over and die. Disarm is really good in that regard. Appealing for your healer on Safeguard. You can actually hold back, disarm a little bit, just in case. Just something to think about. Arms Warrior is just so flexible this season, but this is the highest damage build that I've seen, and I'm doing disgusting damage, like where I'm not even running Mortal or Sharpened Blade against Resto Druids, and they're still dying through Tranquility, just because I'm doing so much damage. And Massacre, again, You execute so much. I don't feel like you need that finishing power of execute. You're going to run out of rage anyway. Better to have rage to spend on overpower, things like that, and thunderclap. And when you don't have thunderclap, honestly, spread your bleeds everywhere. You're going to do more damage anyway. You're going to get more executes, buff, and with that, more executes means more damage, which means more mortal strike damage, which means just overall unhealable dam on the entire enemy team. Even single target, it's still doing a ton of damage. But anyway, guys, I wanted to bring you the definitive guide for 10.2 Arms Warrior, and y'all have a good one. Goodbye now.